In this scenario, I'm going to show you how we can configure ISIS level 2 routers. Actually, in this scenario, we have three routers, router 1, router 2, and router 3. I want to configure all of them as level 2 routers. The difference between this scenario and the previous scenario with level 1 routers is here we configure or we can configure different area in the net address of each router. We will use this situation in future scenarios. In those scenarios, we will see that we have level 2 and level 1 routers. Actually, here we are preparing ourselves for the future scenarios. Here we have three routers, router 1, router 2, and router 3. I want to show you how you can configure different areas in each router. And as you can see here in router 1, we have 49.0001 as the area in the net address. And in the router 2, we will have 49.0002. And in router 3, we will have 49.0003. Don't forget, if you want, you can configure same area ID in level 2 routers, but it is possible to use different area IDs in the net address of each of them. For example, this is our text file. In the text file, you can see that in router 1, we will have this net address, 49001 is the area ID, and after that we have 6 bytes system ID, and after that net address. But in the router 2, the area ID is different. It is possible. Why? Because this router is the level 2 router, and we can have adjacency, ISIS adjacency between routers with different area ID because they are a level 2 or L2 routers. You know that between level 1 or L1 routers, we need to have same area ID. Let me to configure this scenario. It is so easy. Don't forget we have again 7 steps. Step 1, draw the topology in EVE-NG. You need to draw it, but I did it. After that, interface IP address assignment and no shutdown command in router 1, router 2, and router 3. Again, I did it. Check routing table in router 1 and router 2 and router 3. You know that now we have only connected and also local networks because I didn't configure ISIS in this scenario. And after that, configure ISIS in R1, R2, and R3. I will configure it. And then check the routing table in router 1, router 2, and router 3 and connectivity between the router 2's loopback 0 and router 3's loopback 0. Finally, we can check neighborship between these three routers, and also we can check the database in router 1, router 2, and router 3. Don't forget, you need to configure IS type level 2 only. Why? Because the default level in ISIS, in Cisco ISIS, is level 1, 2. If you want to configure a router as the level 2 only router, you need to configure it. Okay? Other configuration are same with the previous scenarios. Let me to start it. It is very simple scenario. In the router 1, okay, I can start with configure terminal, and after that router ISIS. If you want, you can configure a tag for ISIS, but it is not mandatory. After that, let me to configure net address. Net address is 49.00, for example 01. After that, quad 0, then quad 0, and then 0001.00. This is the net. And after that, IS type, look at here, IS type, I want to configure IS type level 2 only. That's it. If you want, you can enable log adjacency change all for seeing the log of adjacency, and that's it. After that, you need to configure ISIS on the interface serial 10, serial 11 in the router 1, interface serial 10. After that, IP router ISIS, and then interface serial 11, IP router ISIS. That's it. This is the configuration of router 1. Then let me to go to router 2. In the router 2, enable configure terminal, again router ISIS, configure net address, net 49.0002. As you can see here, we have different area ID with router 1. After that, for example, quad 0, quad 0, 0002.00. And then, for example, IS type is level 2 only again, and log adjacency change all. And then interface serial 10. Look at here, IP router ISIS. We will have adjacency between the router 1 and router 2, and this is the level 2 adjacency. It means that the router 1 and router 2 can exchange with each other level 2 database. Okay, and after that, here we have, for example, the log of adjacency. Adjacency to this router on serial 10 is up. Also in the router 1 we have a log for adjacency. In the router 2 also, let me to enable the ISIS and the loopback 0, IP interface loopback 0, IP router ISIS. That's it. And then let me to go to the router 3. In the router 3, enable configure terminal, again router ISIS, and then net address, different net address 49. If you want, you can configure same area ID. It's possible. When two level 2 routers are members of one area, they can share the same area ID, but we are assuming they are the level 2 routers of different areas. You will see these situations in future scenarios. Net 49 quad 0 or 0003, for example, then quad 0 quad 0 0003.00. And after that, here the log adjacency change all, and finally IS type is level 2 only. That's it. And then interface serial 10, IP router ISIS. Now again, we will have neighborship ISIS adjacency between router 3 and router 1, and then interface loopback 0, again IP router ISIS. That's it. Let me to check the neighborship. In router 1, ISIS adjacency, show ISIS adjacency, or for example, you can use show ISIS neighbors. As you can see, we have neighborship between the router 1 and router 2 and router 1 and router 3. This neighborship is level 2 neighborship on serial 10, on serial 1011. This is the IP address of the router 2. This is the IP address of the interface of router 3. State is up, and here you can see other information. That's it. And then here in the router 1, if you check show IP route, for example ISIS, you will see that we have two ISIS learned routes, quad 2/32 and quad 3/32. As you can see, both of them are learned from ISIS. I means ISIS, and L2 means they are learned from the level 2 database, ISIS level 2. Okay, and here you can see the administrative distance of ISIS 115, and this is the metric 20, because in ISIS each link has by default has metric of 10. Because of that, in router 1 we have metric of 20 to quad 3, 10 for this interface serial 11 or this link, and after that 10 for the interface loopback, 10 plus 10 equal 20. And also for quad 3 we have similar situation. In the router 2, again, we can use a show IP route ISIS. So easy. As you can see, we learned quad 3 and also 10.1.3.0/24 from the ISIS. Here we have IL2. Actually, until now, we have seen two types of ISIS learned routes, IL1 and IL2. But in ISIS, we have two other type of route learned that we will see them in future videos, ISU and also IIA. Okay, and after that, let me to check the connectivity between the loopback 0 of router 2 and router 3, for example ping quad 3 with the source of loopback 0. As you can see, we have connectivity. If you want, you can use trace route quad 3 with the source of loopback 0 numeric. As you can see, traffic will go to the router 1, 10.1.2.1, the router 1, and after that 10.1.3.3, the router 3. Actually, in this video, we learned about how we can configure ISIS level 2 only or ISIS level 2 routers.